Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you guys are doing good. This is me, Abu Bakr Dilaver. I welcome you all to our latest episode of Founders Kahani. So, as you know, in Founders Kahani, we always encourage young startup founders. We all get encourage young minds to do their own inventions, to do their own ventures. For that, we invite different people from around the world so that their kahani, their story can help you out, like how you can figure out. So, like as always, we also have a very cool guest with us. We have a very fun guest with us. So, yeah, actually, this is uh, also like very close to my heart, this podcast, because I'm a huge fan of this guy. So I got him on this podcast after a lot of effort. So please welcome the Roger Osario. So he is the founder of the School of Reinvention. How are you, Roger?
Hey man, I am great. I'm really excited to be able to connect with you. Luckily through the TechStars connection,
Wow.
and I'm excited to share a little bit about my story and to be able to hopefully share some interesting strategies, ideas, insights, and lessons with your audience.
That's really good. So this is Founders Kahani. So if we talk about what's the Rogers Kahani is.
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about what inspired me. My decision to redefine success on my own terms. I think that was one of the first things we wanted to talk about today. And when I was in my first corporate career back in 2008, and it was actually in 2007 that I started to think differently about success. I I was actually enjoying a good career. I actually liked the corporate job that I had. I was a salesperson, national account salesperson, and I sold beer coolers to Anheuser-Busch, which is a big beer company. And the cooler would bring the temperature of the beer down to below its freezing point without freezing the product. So in the United States, you can imagine like cold beer is everything, right? Everybody loves cold beer. So imagine having beer that is colder than the freezing point of the product without it freezing. So it's very cold beer. I had a lot of fun doing this work. I got to go to a lot of really great events. I got to connect with a lot of awesome people, great conferences, all of that. Really cool parties. In fact, Anheuser-Busch is one of the biggest sponsors of the Super Bowl. They have what is called the Bud Bowl parties, and I got to go to that as part of my work. I mean, so it was a really crazy experience to be able to do that. However, there was a part-time job I had at the time teaching math for just a few hours a day and not even every day of the week. And in that part-time job, I started to develop a passion for teaching math. I was simply tutoring math students, and I only did it to make a little extra money to pay off my student loans more quickly. But in the process, I started to fall in love with this, and I didn't know what to do with that feeling. I thought to myself, like, what is success then here? Because I am successful when it comes to my corporate career, but this is not feeling as exciting anymore, or maybe it doesn't feel like something that I really want anymore. And teaching math is starting to become that passion. And so that was the first moment that my definition of success was challenged. And I had to really think about, how I was going to redefine it and reimagine it. And that was that inspiration. It was that one experiment, tutoring math, which I never would have imagined would be the moment that I would have like a major decision point in my life. But it's what inspired me to redefine success and begin on a new path to work towards becoming a math teacher. And without spoiling too much of the story, I did become a math teacher. It took many years, but I ended up teaching math in the classroom. I taught high school math and middle school math.
That's I literally getting goosebumps after listening to this because as many of my listeners know, I'm also a professional and a sales guy, as professional marketer and a sales guy in my whole career. Even I sometimes say that I think I want to be a marketer because when I think about something to sell something, then even in the dreams, the strategies come into my mind that how we can sell it and how we can do it. But like that's why in the beginning of the podcast that I said, because I read your book, I thought about go through all your website and all about your about of all social media. So I think I see myself in you. So that's a huge thing for me, and I think literally I never said this on any podcast, but I'm still saying that this is going to be the best podcast of my life that I ever recorded, and I'm not bragging it. I'm just saying out of my heart because I don't really say that on the people's face, but literally, it's a huge respect for you. Like I can totally relate to you. So, as a teaching career that you have started, you also have built your own school of reinvention. Can you tell us about what is school of reinvention is and what type of teachings that you are providing there?
Yeah, so the School of Reinvention is a really great story, I think, for founders. It's a founder's story because it's still in development. I'm still learning so much from the customer. You and I are part of the Startup Weekend Network, and we organize and facilitate events that help people learn how to take a business idea from concept to creation. And one of the things that we often talk about in events like this is that it's so important for you to know who your customer is and what the problem is that you're solving for that customer. And this has been my journey in figuring out what the School of Reinvention is. So back in 2020, just 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was laid off from my most recent corporate job. I was working at IBM, which is a tech company, one of the oldest tech companies in the world. And I was working as an executive coach and a program director. And in that work that I was doing, I mean, it was great work and all of that. But when I got laid off, of course, you never see it coming. And so it was a moment, it was an opportunity to consider, well, what do I do next? And I thought to myself, well, why not reinvent myself once again? And I had already reinvented myself many times. But specifically, what ended up happening with that layoff was that I had 30 days. Everybody who got laid off, there were about 10,000 people who got laid off in that moment. And all of us had 30 days left at the company. And then we would, leave the company together on the same day. And I talked to a dear mentor of mine who said, I when I told her the news, she said, I'm not worried about you because I think that you know what it takes, and you will figure out a way to reinvent yourself once you get out there because you've done this many times. You've been out there, you've figured it out, you've done things outside of the traditional corporate career. So I know you'll find a way. She's like, I'm worried about the people who have been here at the company for all of their career, people who have been here for 10, 20, 30 years who are being laid off. For them, that's a different story. Getting laid off is going to be devastating because they may not know how to reinvent themselves in this new world. And she mentioned for some of them, when they applied to a job, they didn't apply online. They turned in a physical paper application because there weren't these systems yet. And so that's how long some people have been at IBM. And so she said, they're going to need a lot of help in terms of reinventing themselves and figuring out their next step. And so she issued a challenge. She said, I want you to find a way to help these people in the next 30 days. That's what I want you to dedicate your final 30 days at this company to. And that for me was just such an inspiring purpose. And so I got to work and I came up with an idea that I called the Reinvention Mastermind. I thought, let's gather 3 times a week for the next 4 weeks for an hour to 2 hours. And I will teach a mini lesson about one of the things I've learned about reinvention along my journey. And we will have breakout groups with an activity. So there will be a story, a lesson, and then an activity. And so every one of these sessions, that's what we did. And I was able to recruit up to, I think the max was 7. We hit 750 people was the most that we hit for this reinvention mastermind. These are 750 people at the company who decided to identify themselves as being laid off. There was no list. So no one knew who was going to be laid off until the day we all left. And then you would know who was gone. And so I started these reinvention masterminds. And in the process of doing that, I realized there's a lot that I do know about reinvention. And I really enjoy helping these people find a way to reinvent themselves in such a difficult moment. And so I asked myself the question, what if this is what I do for the next chapter of my life? What if this is the business that I bring to life? And for a while, I've been thinking, I think I one day want to have my own business and be an entrepreneur full time rather than just part time. And this idea felt the most connected to me, the most aligned. And so when the final day of IBM came, I left and I began the business. I didn't know what to call it, but I think a month later, I came up with a name, the School of Reinvention. And I didn't know what the School of Reinvention was going to be. I thought, well, maybe it's a mastermind, maybe it's courses, maybe it's a community, maybe it's coaching. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I know that there is a space that I'm creating for people to come and learn more about how to reinvent themselves when reinvention is hard. And so since 2020, the middle of 2020, June, July 2020, I have been on a journey to figure out what this business is. I've run every experiment that, that I thought of to learn more about my customer, to learn more about the problem, to learn more about the potential business models that could keep this business going. And in this year, 2023, it was the first time that we started to get a lot of clarity as to who the customer was, what the problem is, and how we might be able to solve it. And so we have focused in on a few areas. So where the School of Reinvention is today, it's first a podcast. So the podcast right now is the central focus of our business. We're growing this podcast as a standalone entity. We want this podcast to be a profit generating entity. So that's what we're building right now. I'm growing the team. In fact, just yesterday, I spoke to a new podcast producer. The other day, I was on the phone with a really expert editor who can edit video and audio. And we're working on a lot of different things. I'm turning this space that you see behind me into a studio environment so that I can host in-person interviews. And the mission of the podcast is to learn from others how they reinvented themselves. It's to be able to then take those learnings and then bring it to the community, bring it to people through the podcast so that they can learn how to launch their own reinventions. My story is just one reinvention story. It's not the ultimate story. It's not the only story. So I know that my story cannot teach everyone, but if I can collect enough stories, then we can teach more people. The School of Reinvention is also my book, which is behind me here. And it's called The Journey to Reinvention, How to Build a Life Aligned with Your Values, Passions, and Purpose. And The Journey to Reinvention is a book that I wrote after I started to really think about what I have learned along the journey to reinvention. If I could rename this book in a second iteration, I would call it The Courage to Reinvent Yourself, because that's what I think the book really does do really well based on reviews. But I called it The Journey to Reinvention. Maybe one day I'll work with the publisher to change it. So we have the podcast, we have the book. I'm working on another book. So I think the future of the School of Reinvention is also publishing. It's also bringing more books to the world, books about this topic and subtopics related to the School of Reinvention. Another piece of this is the community. So I've soft launched. So this is an interesting time for us to have this conversation because I just soft launched a membership community. And the purpose, the mission of the membership community is to create a weekly opportunity for me to get on a call with people who are reinventing themselves and who are encountering challenges in the moment. I want to be able to address, so what's the challenge of this week? Let's get on a call. And I will host this space where we can have this call every single week, once a week. And you can join as many weeks in a month as you want or whenever you want. But I want it to be something that is really accessible. I plan to build courses that would go as a part of this. So anybody who's a member would also receive courses as part of the School of Reinvention membership. So this is another way that I'm testing right now to see if this helps and adds value, because I believe that reinvention is not something that has a one-size-fits-all solution. In all the research I did for my book, the biggest learning was that no two reinventions are the same. No two reinventions are the same. We all start somewhere different, and we all bring different things to the reinvention challenge. And so we bring different experiences, skills, attitudes, personalities. All of those things make an impact on how we're going to walk that journey. So it's not like building a website where I could start a course, the 10 steps, the ultimate 10 steps to building a website. And those 10 steps can be definitive for anyone that wants to build a website. I can't do that for reinvention. And that's why I believe a membership, a community, books, podcasts, stories, these are the ways to help people reinvent themselves, because they need to hear someone that they feel connects to them more. Maybe my guest from last week, they're like, yes, Kelsey, she is me. I am her. Her story is going to help me now because I needed to hear her story. Roger's story, it's nice and I appreciate it, but I needed Kelsey's story. Cool. So we have the podcast. So this is what I'm looking to build right now through the membership, the podcast, the books. And then there's coaching. Coaching is the other part of the School of Reinvention. And this is, really, it's for the people who are working on a very specific challenge. So if they say that like, hey, Roger, I haven't, I know what I want to reinvent myself into. I just don't know how to get started. I need I need the next 2 months to be those months where I get something going. Cool. I can help you with that challenge. In 2 months, I will help you, or even a month, I will help you launch an experiment that will move you in the direction of your desired reinvention. So this is the school of reinvention. It is ever evolving, and we'll see in a year, what it looks like and which of these has risen to the top.
I think, man, you are doing really amazing work, and the School of Reinvention is doing their best job. And I think in this type of recession area, this is the thing that we mostly needed, because I mostly know myself who were doing good jobs, but now they have no job, and now the world became so far, like they do not know how to cope up with the world. That's a real problem that we are facing right now. So we were talking about the courage of reinvention. So you reinvented yourself, and it takes a lot of courage to reinvent. So what are the challenges and what are the setbacks that you faced during your reinvention, and how you overcome that?
Yeah, so there are many. So I'll pick a few that I think will help this audience. So one of the main ones are limiting beliefs, because there are many times where you have ideas in your mind that are actually not bad ideas. They've actually served you, they've helped you. These beliefs, even though they could be limiting, there were moments where they were actually helpful. And because of that, they are in us, and they can get in the way when you're trying to move in a direction that is very different from whatever you were doing. Meaning, this belief no longer serves you. It's actually now become limiting. It could have been empowering in one setting and limiting in another. For instance, beliefs about money. I grew up in a setting that was, not wealthy or anything like that. We were not middle income, but we were not super low income, but we were right in the middle there between low income and middle income. And there were times where we were struggling when my parents were unemployed, and you know things were going not tough times were going on. It's able to get money, you have to save it, you have to really be careful like what you spend it on, all of these things. Now, that's a good mindset when money is limited, right? That helps you be more responsible with money, to make sure you don't throw it away on something that is not going to help you or the family. And so that mindset served me when I was going through high school, when I was going through university, so that I could be a little bit wiser in how I spent any money that I did get from my jobs, part-time work I did, whatever it was. And so I think that mindset helped me out. But when I got to a point where all of a sudden I needed to see the world differently, like when I was reinventing myself, I needed to look at money as a different thing. I needed to look money as not so much about survival, but maybe as an opportunity to grow, to develop, maybe to invest in myself and grow, maybe to invest in a business idea and grow that. And that was a struggle. And so there were many times, I'll tell you, where I had a really interesting idea, maybe for a product or a business that I could bring to life. And all it would have taken was investing, maybe a few $1,000s in getting some help to bring that to life. Maybe hiring a company like the one that you work for that, helps people develop an app idea or something, or do some technical development work. And it's not a lot of time. And if that's not what you want to do for a living, well, it becomes a distraction. So that was one. There were a lot of limiting beliefs around money, but there were many others around what I could do. There were times where I wondered, can I bring a business idea to life? But I'm not an entrepreneur. I have a degree in business. I started my first career was in corporate. I'm used to working for others. I only know how to work for a boss. I don't know how to be the boss. Like, that's a different story. And so that was another limiting belief. Learning how to manage myself, learning how to grow a business, learning how to take a lot of those responsibilities on. And there were many beliefs around that held me back. Again, they served me when I was in corporate. Those are fine beliefs when I was in corporate, because it allowed me to be a good employee. But now I'm in this world where all of a sudden I'm trying to reinvent myself into something that is different, very different, maybe an entrepreneur or whatever. and these beliefs don't serve me. So that's the first thing I'll say, that are one of the biggest challenges that anyone on the journey to reinvention will encounter. There will be challenges to your belief systems, to the ideas that you subscribe to the beliefs that you live by, and um, don't blame yourself don't blame yourself or be hard on yourself for that. Don't say, why do I have these bad beliefs? Think about it. Chances are that belief served you at some point. So it was actually necessary for a little while. And now it's not. And that's okay. But now that you're aware of this, use that opportunity of awareness to start thinking about, what belief will serve me? Where can I find inspiration for a different idea, a different way of thinking about money, skills, careers, relationships, whatever the challenge might be? And where can I see someone else doing that, so I can borrow their mindset, so I can borrow their beliefs, so I can borrow their approach to this? So this is the first challenge or setback that I wanted to bring up. The second is about certifications, degrees, requirements. So when people reinvent themselves, they're often using that word because it's pretty radical, the change that they want to make. So they're not going from one type of marketer to another. They're not going from one type of medicine to another. They're going from like, hey, I was a marketer and I want to become an accountant, or I'm an accountant and I want to become a doctor, or whatever, you name it, or I'm a national sales person, national account sales manager, and I want to become a math teacher. These are very different things. And when you make the change into very different things, you quickly realize, oh, wow, there are a lot of requirements I don't have. I don't have a degree in teaching. I don't have a certification to teach legally in the United States. I don't have any formal math education, in terms of a degree in math. So if I don't have a teaching degree and I don't have a math degree and I don't have the required teaching certifications, how am I going to teach? This reinvention seems like it already lost. Like, I can't do this at this point. And so the message I want to share here about that is that there is always a way. There is always a way. And I'm going to share a couple of stories that I think will make that point super clear. The first story is that when I got started and I didn't have all of those three things that I just mentioned, I came up with another idea. I said, what else could I do? And I came up with an idea. I could tutor math. There are no degree requirements for tutoring. There's no certificate needed. Anyone can tutor. I can just put up an ad on Craigslist, on any platform online. I can put up physical flyers in libraries and coffee shops. Nothing stops me from doing that. So that's what I did. I put up digital ads. I put up posts that offering my services. I put up flyers on bulletin boards and and that was a really great experience because it showed me that I was able to do something I really wanted to do without all of the degree certification and requirements that felt like these were external. Like, I have to pass these tests or these requirements in order to become a math teacher. No, I don't. I could tutor math, and that's another way of teaching math. So I did that for many years. Now, when I wanted to get into the classroom, now was the time where I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go into the classroom. And here come these requirements again. These requirements are standing in my way. Some people told me, well, Roger, you have to go back to school. Well, this wasn't a good answer for me because I had just gone back to school, but not for math and not for teaching. I got a master's in psychology and an MBA. None of those will help you become a teacher in a school, like a math teacher in high school. So I thought, okay, well, they said, well, you're going to have to go back to school and do a program that helps you get a very quick teaching degree or a quick math certification or something like that. And I just thought, I'm done with school for a little while. Like, I need a break. I just went through 2 years of 2 master's programs at the same time. I'm taking a break from learning. And so I had to find another way. So then I started thinking, all right, so I'm not going to go back to school. So what else could I do? Well, it turns out that the answer to my getting in was in a place that I didn't expect. It was actually at a networking event that I went to. And I went to this networking event, and it was organized by a school district. And there was a school superintendent in there and a bunch of other people from the school. And I met a woman there who worked for the superintendent. And she was very social, came around, talked to everybody. And so I was at a table with my friends, and she didn't know who we were. And so she asked us, "Oh, what do you guys do?" And so we all kind of explained what we do. And I mentioned, well, I've been tutoring people for about, 4 years now. And I'm a specialist in taking students that are failing and turn them into students that are passing and doing really well. And she's like, "Wow, that's really cool. Tell me more about that." And I told her a little bit more. She said, "I want to introduce you to somebody. We have a school superintendent here, and I think he should talk to you because there might be an opportunity." And I said, "Okay." I wasn't really sure what was going to happen here. So I went to talk to him. I told him I barely had 15 seconds to explain what I did to this man. I like to explain what my work. Before he interrupted me, he turned away. He looked at the woman that was with him, Linda, and he said, "Linda, I want you to set up an appointment with this young man in the next 2 weeks." And I'm thinking, you could tell me that, but okay. And so she did exactly that. In 2 weeks, I was in his office, and he was explaining to me that he had two schools that were failing in math at part of his district. And he goes, I need a different idea. I need a different solution. The traditional stuff is not working. And you said that you've been able to help students who go from failing to passing, and like making the big leaps. So I want to bring you in to be, now I know you're not a teacher, and I know you're not certified, and I know you don't have degrees. I already looked up all your info, so I know you. I already know that you can't do that way. So I have another idea. I want to bring you in as a consultant, and I can get you into the classroom because the law says that there needs to be a certified teacher in this classroom. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have a certified teacher in the classroom doing other work, grading papers from their class, but you will be the teacher. So as long as there's a certified teacher in the room, you can teach legally without us breaking the law. I was blown away. I go, wait, what just happened here? He found a way around the law so that I could become a math teacher in his school. And so the point of that story is that even when everyone tells you it's impossible, you need all these requirements, you're so far behind, you won't get there. Honestly, I believe after that experience, I know there's always a way. There's always another way. Now, does that mean you will find that way by yourself? No. I needed this man, this superintendent, his name was Frank. I needed Frank to have ideas, and he knew his world really well. I didn't, but he knew the education world so well that he knew where the little opportunities were in the rules where he could get me in. And so this second idea of this second challenge or setback that I want to leave with you is that there will be requirements that will feel like they are a wall, like a dead end. You can't go through them. I promise you, there is always a way, but you're going to have to bring your best self. You're going to all encounters. You're going to have to connect with people. You're going to have to make friends in the area that you want to go in the direction you want to go. Frank was a superintendent. Linda, who was the woman who made the original introduction, worked for him. So she was in the education world as well. You have to connect with people in the education world or in the world you want to go to in order to find these opportunities. And I can promise you that if they see your passion, your energy, your desire to be there, they will want to find a way to get you into their world, and they will make it happen. They will find that way. So it's not going to always happen alone. It requires people, but this setback can be overcome. So these are the two that I want to leave you with. There are the limiting beliefs, and then there are the requirements, the degrees, the certifications. There's always a way around them.
So, Roger, like we were talking about the book that you have written, like the journey of reinvention and the courage of reinvention that you are going to write in the future. So, like, there are a lot of people, personally, by myself, I also wanted to write a book. Like, I love to write something. As there are a lot of my friends who write blogs on different sites. So, how is the journey of writing a book? And how, from a corporate guy, you ended up becoming a writer?
Yeah. So this journey to become a writer started way long before I actually got the book written. I mean, I think it was the first time I had an idea or the thought or the inspiration to consider writing a book was in 2010 or 11, I think is when I first thought about it. And I thought, you know what? I want to be able to bring some interesting ideas around teaching math. That was what I wanted to write about. And I would start, I would pick a day and I would set a time. I'd go to a coffee shop and I'd open up Microsoft Word or something, and I would just say, all right, let's, start writing. And maybe for a week, I would go through this activity and then it stops. And then I would never follow it through. I would never finish it. So I say that, maybe there were many times, I would say, that I had false starts. Moments where I started for a week and it never went past that. And so it's something that I've always really wanted to do, but there's a difference between wanting to do something and actually doing it. And so in 2021, I was inspired by a YouTuber named Ali Abdaal. And Ali Abdaal, he's based out of the UK, and he talked about writing for his blog and his journey to writing for his blog and what his inspirations were. And he shared a few resources and a few different things that helped him start writing more to his blog. And it was through him that I decided, I was inspired to start writing more to my blog. So not necessarily writing a book, but write more to my blog. And I set a challenge to myself to write and publish one article a day, per weekday for 100 weekdays. And I got onto this challenge and I started the day with this challenge. So meaning I cannot work on anything else or do anything else until I write, edit, and publish my blog article for the day. And I did this every weekday. And I made it to about 75 before I ended up not continuing with the challenge. I set the original challenge to 100. And it was simply because I was in the process of moving from one country to another. And so there were a lot of other things that took my attention and I wasn't able to, continue that cadence. But writing 75 articles will very much make an impact on your writing muscle, your ability, your ideas. You start to develop more of your ideas. You start to develop a writing voice. All of these things make a big difference. And so that ended. The 75th article was probably in, I think it was June of 2021. And not even maybe 2 months later, I saw on LinkedIn somebody talked about a book writing cohort or program. And I was like, a program for writing a book? Well, I've been trying to write a book for a long time and I just never get it done. And so, I mentioned, and I had been on this journey to reinvention in terms of building the school of reinvention. So I've been thinking a lot about reinvention. And I thought I'd love to write a book on reinvention. I feel like I have a lot of experience that I can share. I can interview people, learn more and all that. So when I saw this program come up, this book writing program, I joined. I signed up right away and I felt like my writing muscle was warmed up thanks to the blogging. The blogging warmed up my writing muscle. And so when I got into the course, I was able to get into the writing mode and start writing. And essentially what the course did was it taught us how to write a draft manuscript. And that is what you send to a publisher. And then the publisher decides if they accept your draft manuscript in order to convert that and turn it into a fully developed book. So a draft manuscript is, I think it's 30,000 words. You have to have at least 30,000 words. Your book might ultimately be 50,000 words, but you have to have those 30,000. And that's like your draft. And so I learned how to write a draft and I wrote it. And I started to really get into this. Then I got into the editing process. I loved the editing process. I thought it was going to be really tedious, but actually it's incredibly fun to watch the words that you wrote transform into something more impactful. And it was a really cool process to go through. But when I reflected on how did I get this book done? I wanted to write a book for a decade and I finally got it done and it happened in 1 year. Actually, it happened in exactly 11 months. I think it was almost 11 months, almost to the day. But from the point that I joined the accelerator or the program, the cohort, to the point where I had the book in my hand and the book was officially released and available for anybody to buy. And so upon reflecting, I realized that the biggest difference between all of those false attempts that didn't work out and the false starts and the one that actually did work out was the reason why, was my purpose. It was the purpose that was different. In all of those years before when I wanted to write a book, the only reason I wanted to write a book or the main reason I wanted to write a book was because a lot of people told me that a book is a great credibility builder. that if you have a book, it becomes your calling card. It's like it's the best business card you can have, is to have a book. You can bring it to events. You can have it physically with you and hand it to people and say, hey, you know what? Take a copy of my book. And that just, whoa, that's awesome for networking. That transforms your brand, that transforms your credibility, your authority in a certain space, and all of this. So and that's a rationally very good reason to write a book. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. The thing is, the effort that it takes to write a book is pretty significant. And because of that, you need a lot of good reasons that it means something to you. Now, for some people, that reason is all they need in order to go and enter this journey and come out and with a book finished. For me, it wasn't enough. That reason was not powerful enough to make me want to do it. So it wasn't until I got laid off in 2020 and I decided to start the School of Reinvention that I finally had the reason I needed. And the reason I needed was that I wanted to share what I had learned about reinvention with others who needed it. And for me, this purpose was so much more powerful than the credibility builder, the great business card, the authority, the status I would get, blah, 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 fill in the blanks. The reason of being able to help people learn from these, and that was the first reason. The second reason, which I'd never considered, was that when you write a book, you organize all of your thinking around a topic. See, right now, if I ask you to talk about a topic that you're passionate about, you'll talk and you'll talk and you'll talk and you'll talk and you'll talk. But that talking will probably not make too much sense. It'll go in many different directions. It'll come back. It'll go this way. It'll go that way, and all of this, because you're just, like, I'm really passionate about this. When you write about your passion or you write about your interests, you organize your thinking. And when you talk about it, you know what the most important things to talk about are. So now you don't talk about everything. You only talk about the things that matter. So when you asked me a question earlier, you asked about, what are two challenges or what are challenges and setbacks? I could have, if an older version of me, or a younger version, I should say, the younger version of me would have answered maybe 5 or 6 ideas. But because of all the writing I've done, because of all the work I've done on this research and all of that, I don't have to share 5 or 6 with you. I can share 2. I can talk about limiting beliefs and certifications, because I know those are 2 very important ones. It doesn't mean that there aren't more. It simply means that I've organized my thinking and I know these are the 2 that will be the most impactful. So I'm going to leave it there, and that's what writing does. Writing allows you to organize your thinking. And so for anybody who's listening, who is thinking about how a book might be able to play a role in their life, what I would add to your thinking, or I would offer you, is that a book is the quickest way to become an expert in something that you're not an expert in. This was the biggest lesson that came from writing a book. I used to believe that to write a book, you must be the expert. Otherwise, how would you write a book? If you're not an expert, where are the ideas going to come from? And it turns out that no, that's not the only way to do it. Yes, you can be an expert at something and then write a book, but you can also become an expert by writing the book. When you start writing a book, you have to interview a lot of people. You have to do a lot of research, more than the average person does on any topic. And so when you do that, you learn. There's no way around it. You're going to learn more than you ever thought you could know about a topic. And all of a sudden, you will become the expert. I had a dear friend who is an executive coach, and she told me in conversation, when I told her about my book, she goes, "Oh, you know what? I have a long-term goal to write a book one day, the famous one day that never comes." And so I was like, "Really? Okay, cool. Why not write it now?" Well, I feel like I need to really learn more, become more, be better at what I do, and then I can unlock a book. And I told her, no, I disagree. I go, you can write the book right now. 1, you've been doing the work you've done for a long time, so you already have a lot of experience. But 2, you will become the expert. You will become the person you think you need to be to write a book by actually writing the book. And I'm excited to say that her book is currently in the editing phases. So she's almost done with her book. So she's on that journey and she started writing that book. So for anyone who thinks that they're not good enough, they don't know enough, they're not ready to write a book, I can promise you right now that writing the book will make you ready. So if you're thinking about this, make that transition, And do consider to just get onto the research, the interviews, and write your book. You will become the expert.
I think I'm gonna start writing the book right after this podcast. Yeah, this is like really good. I think this is I totally believe it, because I personally myself write a lot of blogs. I also thought about reading a book about entrepreneurship and startups, because I'm facing through an anxiety. I'm facing through a career reinvention as well. I'm facing through a complex inferiority complex kind of a situation, superiority complex kind of a situation, mixed things. So yeah, I think you are very right that if when you start writing things down, things will sort in front of you. I think this is you said it very well. Like if you wanted to be the expert and you can write a book. Literally, I wrote down a lot of questions to ask from you, but you gave me already enough knowledge that I have no words to say after this, because I just wanted to say that literally you are doing the best job. And I think you are doing really such a great job with the School of Reinvention and with your journey. And I think it's so inspiring for a person like me who's going through their phase of life, because mostly, for the Gen Z, the 20s are the most confusing period. So
Yeah.
you got a lot of, there are some people who have like no opportunity, but there are some people who got a lot of opportunity. And that's also a problem, like which opportunity should you take, which opportunity should you not take, and the huge concept of FOMO that you're facing because of that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts about on FOMO?
About what?
About FOMO.
FOMO?
Yeah.
FOMO. Oh, okay. So, I mean, for me, this idea of missing out on something is, uh, it, it doesn't bother me actually. I don't feel this too much because well, and I'll tell you why. The what helps you not feel it is when you have a lot of clarity around where you want to go and what you want to do. When you don't have clarity, everything seems like a possibility. So that's when you start to really feel a lot of FOMO, because that's the moment where you start to really wonder, like, oh, should I be doing this or that or that or that or that? But they all happen on the same day. So how do I do them all? I can't do them all. I can only do one. This is driving me crazy. And I went through that, where I wanted to attend every networking event, where I wanted to go to every conference, where I wanted to read every book, where I wanted to do all those things. And life and time has taught me that no, not necessary. I've got to pick what I'm interested in and just go down that path and ignore everything else for now. It'll be there. It'll be waiting. It's fine. I'll come back to it if it is something that I'm really interested in, or it becomes time to pivot in that direction. And so I think that if you can get clarity around what you want to do or what you want to accomplish, and not for life, I'm talking just for this year, for the new year, that's enough. If you do that, I think then you will be in a better position to not worry about what you're missing out on, and instead enjoy what you are doing, because this is what I wanted to do. When I became a math teacher, that's all I wanted to do. Yes, there were a few other curiosities, a few other ideas, but this is what I really wanted to do. So I focused on teaching math, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I didn't worry about the other things that I could be doing. Maybe life will bring me to those things another time. And in many cases, it did. So I was still able to do those things. But this idea of FOMO, I think, comes from not having enough clarity about where it is that you want to go in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the next year. So think about a goal that you want for the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year. Don't even worry about beyond the year, just up to a year max. And when you're doing that, that will help you very quickly tune out a lot of different things. When you look at 10 options, you'll say, well, only 2 of them fit my goal. So bye-bye to the other 8. I'm not missing out. I get to focus on these 2 that matter to me.
Yeah, I think, man, you summed it up very well, because I told you this is a major problem of Gen Z these days. Like we have a lot of FOMO, we have a lot of opportunities. Like at the same time, you have the opportunity to do the startup. There are investors who wanted to do investment with you and they want to run it to you. There are a lot of jobs that are offering to you, and there is another thing that you have to complete your studies as well. So this is a whole kind of a situation that Gen Z
Yeah.
faces a lot these days. So that's create a lot of anxiety and formal situation.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I would argue that this is a thing that happens for anyone in their 20s at any moment. I mean, I went through this in my 20s. Everything was possible. All the opportunities, every call, everything, every job opportunity, everything. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I do them all?
Yeah.
I get it. But the key here is thinking about what you want in the near term up to a year. Don't worry if you're not sure what you want beyond the year. If you know what you want for the next few years, that's great. That's a bonus. But if you know your goal for the year, what matters to you, that one or two goals that matter for you for the year, and the way I always ask myself is, and I recommend people ask themselves is this: if this year concludes with only two or three things done, what are those two or three things that will make this year outstanding? And when you come up with those three, it's very easy to dismiss those things that don't help you get those three. You can bring those things back in once you get those three done. If you get your three missions done for the year, then you can focus on other things.
I think this is a very good answer. So as I told you, I'm also part of Gen Z. So Gen Z also finds a fun part in every serious aspect of the interview. So this was a very serious interview. Now I have a very fun question from you. If I give you a chance to invite three people on your dinner table, dead or alive, who that will be?
That are alive?
Dead or alive?
Oh, dead or alive. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it could be
uh,
anyone.
yeah. So, one person for sure would be Leonardo da Vinci. He's someone that I have ever since I was a teenager. I've been fascinated by his life, and I've done a lot of research on him. I've read a lot of books on him. He's someone that I would be fascinated. It would be fascinating to be able to speak with and have dinner with. Another person for me, this one's alive, would be Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm a big soccer fan, but more importantly, Cristiano Ronaldo for me is someone who understands what it takes to be great. For me, that's the difference between him and Messi. Messi is gifted. Messi was touched by God, as many of his teammates always say. So he wakes up and he is the greatest, and that's it. He just has to wake up, go to sleep, wake up, and you're the greatest. He doesn't have to show up to practice on time. He doesn't have to train hard. He doesn't have to do all those things. He just has to be there. Cristiano, on the other hand, was not that way. He has to train. He has to practice. He has to eat well. He has to take care of his body. He does all these things, and I feel like there's so much that you can learn from someone who has to work so hard to achieve the success that they achieve. And so I would love to be able to have dinner with Cristiano Ronaldo because I want to understand his mindset. I want to understand how after so many 2 decades are you still so disciplined and so motivated to continue to perform at the highest level. I mean, you're almost 39 years old. So he's the second one. And the third person that I would want to sit down with, gosh, this is an interesting one. I think the third person is someone who is not with us anymore, and it's my mom. I mean, I've had many dinners with her, but she passed away last year. And I suppose if you are giving me the opportunity to invite three people, I would invite her as well.
Thank God you didn't say Elon Musk because I'm tired to listen to Elon Musk. Like almost 90% of the people in this podcast said Elon Musk in the answer of this question.
Yeah,
So
no. For me, it's Da Vinci, Cristiano Ronaldo, and my mom.
yeah. So like thank you so much, Roger, for coming to this podcast. Literally, it's the best podcast that I ever recorded. I'm saying this on record. And literally I got goosebumps during the podcast. And as I told you before, like I see myself in you. And like there is a lot of things that I learned from this podcast. There are a lot of confusion that are going in my head. And I got like 60% of the answers from this conversation. And inshallah, we will stay connected. And I would love if you can mentor me during my journey
Yeah.
towards a successful startup founder. And if you need any of my help for the School of Reinvention, do let me know. And there are a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
I just shared a couple of links with you. I'd love to, and first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be on this show, and thank you so much for the feedback. I'm glad that it was helpful. I've learned so much from others, who I've been able to interview and talk to and ask questions to, and so I appreciate this opportunity to be on the other side of that. I also wanted to share, two things that I could use your help with is getting the word out on my podcast. So I included the link there to my website and the podcast page. It's on available on Apple and Spotify and a few other platforms. But yeah, this is something that I'm focusing on in 2024. My big mission here is to grow this audience, to grow the subscribers, the followers, all of that to the podcast. So that's the first one. The second one is a link I have for an opportunity for anybody who wants the Kindle book of my book for free. So you just have to sign up here. You'll become a part of the School of Reinvention weekly reinvention report, where I share a lot of different ideas about reinvention, stories, opportunities. And of course, you get a free copy of the Kindle version of my book. So you'll download the file, so you'll have a copy of it right away. So yeah, these two links, if you can share this with your community, this would be helpful. Like I said,
I would love.
2024, looking to build that podcast. I want this podcast to be, one of the top podcasts out there, and that's the mission in the new year.
Yeah, okay, so there are a few questions that people want to ask from you.
Yeah, go for it.
There is a guy called Rahim. He has an answer like how to define like the career. So, like how to define a career. He has this question.
Yeah, how to define a career? I would say I would change the words rather than defining a career. I would say, how do you build your career? I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. I used to try to find good careers or good examples, or I don't know, not good examples, but I guess a good career path. So I wanted to define a career path in a more traditional way. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to build a career path, build my own career in the way that reflects my interests, my passions, my values. And so one of the most powerful ways, I should say, not easy, one of the most powerful ways to do so is to launch as many experiments as you can in the direction of your interests. So, don't wait for the job. Create the job. For instance, I said I wanted to become a math teacher, but I couldn't become a math teacher on day one. So I made myself a tutor because that was something I could do. That was an experiment that I could run so that I could begin learning and I could begin developing a reputation. I could begin getting experiences in teaching. So it took me 4 years of tutoring before I ended up in the classroom as a formal math teacher. So just to share, these things take time. So the most important thing is that you start sooner rather than later. So number one thing I would say for building your career is to start launching experiments, test anything out, put yourself out there. The more you publish your work and what you're doing and put it out in the world and offer it to people, the faster you start to develop a career and build it in the way you want to build it.
Okay, that's I think that's a wonderful answer. So now we have a question from Abdullah. He's asking how to maximize your mental capacity and work capacity.
Yeah. So as far as mental and work capacity, you got to take care of your body and your mind. That's really important. There was a moment, there were most of the journey. I have taken good care of my body, working out, exercise. Those things make a world of difference. And the moments that I didn't, it was noticeable. It was so noticeable. I knew that I wasn't taking care of my body. I knew that it was something that was holding me back. So it's important that you exercise, that you find a way to do it. And it doesn't matter how busy you are. I remember when I was studying 2 masters at the same time, 2 master's degrees. I had a lot of reading to do. I had a lot of homework. And at the same time, I was working a job and I was also running the tutoring business. So I was incredibly busy, but I still made time to go to the gym for a little bit. And the way I did it was I would print out the research papers that I had to read for homework and I would read them on the elliptical machine. So that it was, I wouldn't use the handle part, or if I could put it down on it, on the stand, I would put it there. And then I would read as I did my exercise. I found ways. Go for walks and listen to lectures. Whatever the thing is, but find a way. Get on a bike. On a stationary bike, and hold your work, your books, whatever you have to read. It doesn't matter, but find a way to squeeze in this important thing. You got to take care of your body and have fun with it. Don't make it extra work. I played soccer for a very long time, until about 2019. I was playing on teams, like on teams in different leagues, men's leagues. That was a fun way to stay in shape. I love playing. So I didn't have to, that wasn't effort to work out. I'm like, I can't wait to go play. I can't wait to go train. Like, this is going to be fun. So find it a way to make it purposeful, meaningful, fun for you, so that you guarantee that you will do it most of the time.
Thank you so much, Roger, for coming to this podcast, and thank you guys for listening to for this podcast, for tuning into FM 100.4 today. So this was Roger with us. He shared his amazing journey with us. I learned a lot from his journey. I hope you also learned a lot from his journey. So thank you so much. Stay connected, stay healthy. Allah Hafiz. See you next time with a new kahani and a new file.